All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Palantir Weekly. This is episode number 125. Oh, there he is. He joins right there.
Yeah.
Managing partner at Matty Capel. We got Matt with us. We got Vince with us. We have Amir with us. No Arnie this week because he is doing some stuff, but we do have Amir with us. Let me start off the show with a shout out to Mr. Amir, who has officially become a YouTuber, and he is embracing the YouTube journey. I put his YouTube in the description and in the chat. Please make sure to subscribe and follow. He's already put out 2 really good pieces of videos or pieces of content on Palantir, and very, very in-depth analysis, very, very in-depth content. Amir, how do you feel about being a YouTuber now?
You know, you're one of the main ones that pushed me to try to do this, and Arnie as well. So I'm really grateful for that. I have to say, it feels good right now. As we talked about before, I think I've gotten like 80 comments across 2 videos. There's not a single negative comment. So you're like, oh my God, maybe I'm doing something good, even though I know like I'm a beginner YouTuber. So like the production quality is low, but yeah, it feels good as of right now before the trolls come in. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone that's been watching.
Now that you said this, I have to go and comment something bad on your video.
Yeah, I have to comment.
I'm going to do it right now.
Yeah, we got to balance it out.
So we got someone in the chat who literally saw your video yesterday. So it's good stuff. We always need more Palantir content creators. And I mean, it's important, dude. As the company grows, we need more people that can actually analyze it on the platform. So there's a lot of news in the world of Palantir, a lot of stuff to discuss. We got a ton of deals. We didn't do Palantir Weekly last week, so we have a ton of deals over the past 2 weeks to discuss and go through. But before we do that, I want to do a little bit of a market call before we get started deep into Palantir and just get everyone's take on the macro, because the halfway point of the year is here. S&P 500 up 15% for the year, NASDAQ up about 18%, Bitcoin up about 36%, Berkshire Hathaway 14%, and then NVIDIA, leader of the big tech ones, at a 151%. Palantir is also up 50%. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of Palantir news, just what are your guys' raw thoughts of Palantir's performance over year to date and the market's performance year to date? Let's start with Amir, and then we'll go from there.
You know, I don't really track markets that way. The ones that know me know about that. Like I had no idea about the numbers before you just said it. I think that the presidential elections always make for interesting years. Seems like the market likes the fact that Trump seems to be at the forefront. We also know that Cathie Wood straight up said, I'm voting for the one that's going to be better for the economy, and that's Trump. So seems to be a lot of positive sentiment regarding that. There's been a lot of momentum, even though it's been a quite a volatile year. I don't know what else to add. I just track individual companies, not the markets.
Vince, your thoughts on year-to-date returns for the stock market?
Yeah, I'm the same as Amir, because I think that when you pick stocks and you average into stocks, then you can have long periods of underperforming the market. And then, you know, when the stocks really rally, you can like crash the market performance. So I think that if you're into individual stock picking, the S&P 500 is not so relevant. Maybe like on a 5-year basis, if you're not outperforming the S&P 500, then you're definitely doing something wrong. And I think I speak to many investors who have a large part of their portfolio in Palantir. I mean, we did like 200% versus the S&P 500, 40% last year. And I'm very happy with Palantir's performance this year too. So nothing to complain about.
Okay, Matt, your take on year-to-date performance for Palantir in the broader market.
Broader market. So not my personal performance, just the broader market. Okay.
I mean, you could discuss how much you're up this year, 300%, whatever. What you know?
No. It's not anything like that. So yeah, you noted that the S&P is up about 16%. Chris's and I's public portfolio is up about 40.5%. My portfolio is not doing nearly as well, but it's still up slightly less than double the market's at 29%. For my largest portfolio, I'm not going to go through the other 2 or 3 smaller portfolios, so doing rather well with those. But in terms of macroeconomics, I think the market's been really strong. Obviously, the first half of the year, which has delayed a lot of the potential data that would allow the Fed to really cut rates. I think when we were kind of entering 6 months ago into the year, everybody was anticipating 6-7 cuts starting in March timeframe. We've now been through the first half of the year without a single cut. Other countries have cut. The Fed is kind of now, the U.S. Fed specifically, is now kind of in a corner, trying to understand where they're actually going to be. When they do cut, I think that's going to be very positive for smaller cap companies or mid cap companies. And I think Palantir is going to be dragged along with that, because I still believe that people from a macro perspective or normal retail investor or even an institutional investor perspective don't view Palantir as a massively profitable company, even that they are truly getting to that place where they're starting to throw off a decent amount of money. So I think as these small cap companies, mid cap companies have really been underperforming due to the higher cost of capital, I do think that when we do finally cut, that'll be beneficial for those smaller and mid cap companies. It'll be an opportunity for some of the larger cap companies to cool off a bit. So I think there's some optimism for Palantir in the second half of the year. My price target, I believe, on my last article in Seeking Alpha, which I need to update, by the way, I think I had a price target for 25 for the end of the year. So we're right along pace. I think, with some news, positive, going into the third quarter, I could see a spike up to, $28, $30, especially if you get some really good price target updates after the second quarter announcement and then third quarter announcement. But I still think it will average probably around this 25 mark for the next year or so.
It's so interesting going into 24. As you mentioned, we haven't gotten any rate cuts. Like the sentiment going into 24 was that this is the year we're gonna get the rate cuts. The market's gonna soar. The market is soaring. We're not getting any rate cuts. And as you mentioned about the small and mid caps, I remember like 2.5 years ago, even like 3 years ago, people were like, well, the Russell has been left behind. The small caps are left behind. So small caps are due for a run. And that was like 2.5 years ago, and they're still in the dumpster. So really interesting dynamics there.
Yeah, it's been I don't think anyone expected this year to be I guess Tom Lee and some of the other people out there expected it, but earnings growth has lived up to the hype, even with Palantir. Government growth reaccelerating, GAAP profitable, Titan contract. So there's a lot of good things to be excited for Palantir. And then the broader market, the numbers have been put up. And if you didn't have good numbers like Walgreens, Starbucks, Nike, you got punished, which is what should happen in a healthy market.
All right, Tom Lee has done a phenomenal job forecasting, and I think he did get a lot of crap earlier in the year with respect to people thinking he was nuts. But the thing that he has still underperformed, which he's been predicting all year, is a 50% increase in the Russell 2000 in year 2024. And we have yet really to see it move off that, I guess, range that it's been in since 2022. So I'm curious to see if maybe he has changed his sentiment, but the last I heard within the last 2 weeks, he was still thinking that there was going to be a massive rise in Russell 2000. And I'm anticipating it's all going to be spurred by rate cuts, but uncertain when that's actually going to be.
Yeah, and those rate cuts obviously are hopefully going to help Palantir as well. The one thing about Palantir is that it's up 50% year to date. So I agree with you. I think my price target was 25 by the end of the year. So now it's kind of like people are getting aggressive that they want to see 30, which I think is possible, but we always have to remind ourselves we've had a good year. We just got it very quick. And I think we're never used to getting it so quick, right? Like, because it took years to get out of that $8 purgatory. Then we were stuck at 15 for another 8 months. And so once we got to 23 in like a month, February 5th, since February 5th, we have not seen below $20. And so now it's kind of oscillating that range, but it's healthy as well.
How did you... Oh, sorry, Vince. How did you two guys reach your $25 price targets? Is it like a multiple prediction, or how did you arrive at that?
For me, it was a gut feeling. I was like 23.
It was straight up like...
I did a podcast with Adam Gokarp in January, and we both agreed, yeah, 23, 25 is reasonable.
Sounds about right, according to my gut,
Yeah.
I mean, for me, the price, current fair value of Palantir, I think, is around $22 to $24, and that's based on the growth rate and free cash flow multiple. And I think that when we go above that price, the market is basically pricing in acceleration, which we all think is happening, but it is being in risky territory, and I think that covered calls are going to do insanely well on Palantir in this period. Yeah, I wonder what you guys think about it, because if we stay at 25 for the rest of the year, then yeah, covered calls is going to do fantastic.
Yeah,
I guess if you want my basically the fund that I gave for 25 was bullish on the long-term potential, but cautious about the current valuation. So I think that there's going to be a lot of tailwinds associated with getting future contracts, the ability for AIP to kind of restart growth. But I think it also, with that, it grew really quickly. So it went to like $27, $27.5. And I think that was kind of like a euphoria moment. And this is from February. So it was like right after you had that big spike up in the price. And so I'd anticipate that things kind of needed to settle down before it can make that next leg up into the $30 range. And so I was saying that basically, yes, I think that within the year it could oscillate between, the 22.5 to 27.5, maybe up to $30. But I think the fair value of it right now, just based on the future potential is $25. But I think that was for year-end 2024. Yes, year-end 2024.
All right. Well, one of the ways we might get above $25 is if we keep getting these deals. I think let's start off with the coolest deal we got this week, which is with Palantir and Voyager. So Voyager Space and Palantir announced strategic partnership leveraging AI to drive innovation in space technology. Now, we kind of knew this was going to happen because they signed a memorandum of understanding in February or March. So this deal was bound to happen, but it finally did happen. And it's a really interesting partnership. So the president says, by embracing Palantir's game-changing AI across our operations, we not only enhance Voyager's defense tech capabilities, but also set a new standard for the broader aerospace industry. This collaboration will enable us to deliver unprecedented value and innovation to our customers and stakeholders. Now, the partnership is going to boost Voyager's defense segment, offering the opportunity to use AI to process and optimize flight and testing data on solid fuel thrusters to ensure a smooth flight. The other part that was interesting about this is that Palantir just signed a partnership with Starlab, which is creating a commercial space station, and Voyager is going to leverage Foundry and AIP to onboard the Starlab commercial space station, kind of showing a bit of a network effect between two space companies and Palantir working together. Sham Sankar said Palantir is committed to building transformative AI solutions across every domain. Our work with Voyager enables us to continue expanding the boundaries of these capabilities. I want to start off with Matt and Vince. You both run a podcast called Rocket Lab Weekly. You guys are very familiar with the emerging commercial space market. So let's start off with Vince. What insights can you give on why Palantir is going into space and how you think the space TAM could adapt to Palantir's market?
Well, funny enough, I don't know so much about this Voyager space company, but we know that Palantir does well in places where there's a lot of regulations and a lot of complex data, and space is definitely one of those. I mean, a rocket is basically a controlled explosion with and you put billions of dollars of assets on this controlled explosion, and you need everything basically to go right. And a space station, you're hosting. A space station is billions of dollars. You're hosting probably billions of dollars worth of cargo, human lives, and you have to constantly monitor the altitude, other assets in space that are flying around you to not collide. And there's a lot more technical data there for sure. I think this might be another vertical for Palantir, like healthcare or like Skywise. That they really become the standard for the industry. But it's not the space partnership that I'm waiting for. Which company I want to partner with Palantir in space. I don't know, Matt, do you know anything more about this Voyager space? And
I don't know much about Voyager, but I want to give everyone's attention and make everyone's attention of where these opportunities from a lot of these space contracts have come from. There's a little bit of a contract that was signed in September, August 2021 that a lot of people give a lot of crap to, which is a SPAC investment in Black Sky Technologies. And that is a company that partners actually really well with Rocket Lab very frequently. And we've launched Rocket Lab has launched several rockets on behalf of on Black Sky. And with that, Palantir obviously secured an investment from them, multi-year strategic partnership, pilot project, etc. And I think that probably laid the groundwork for a lot of these satellite companies and space companies to reach out to Palantir. And I think that this has always been something that I recognize is the true value of those SPAC investments, where they might have, yes, spent $100 million worth of money, but that allows them to enter a new vertical in an extremely aggressively growing total addressable market like space. And here we are, less than 3 years later, being able to access not just one additional partnership in 2024, but I'm sure we'll discuss probably the other 3 or 4 that have been announced over the past 2 weeks. And so I think it's something that people need to recognize is, a lot of times people can read these headlines, right? SPACs were a garbage investment for Palantir, etc. But I think it's beautiful, and I also think that the TAM associated with space is also going to be huge, and it also goes back to Palantir's great relationships with the government. I wouldn't be surprised if you see some more relationship building with the Space Force and things along those lines as well, especially as you continue to kind of try to operate satellites and things going forward. So I think it all plays together, and they all have a lot of synergies together with each other.
Yeah, and this one's really interesting because Voyager, apparently they do a lot of defense work, and they want to use Palantir because Palantir knows obviously how to work with the government. So it's a commercial space opportunity, defense opportunities. Palantir is in both domains, so it just made sense for this partnership to materialize. Amir, your thoughts on the space partnership?
Yeah, interesting that Matt picked up on Black Sky there. Good attention to detail. I posted, I think yesterday, a 30-minute video on my channel regarding the strategic commercial contracts, or the SPAC investments, as everyone knows, and why they were genius. And this is a perfect example of that. And I was always fascinated with the mission statement of Palantir throughout their SEC filings, that they are creating operating systems across every industry. And it's also in the Shyam quote in the article you showed, where he says something along the lines of, Palantir is committed to transformative solutions across every domain. It makes you wonder, is there any industry that Palantir can't enter? And I think they're pretty active across every industry that exists. I don't know much about space. We have 2 experts here, but I also noted, as you mentioned, the network effects. We have this example. We have the Airbus example, where they're on board all their suppliers, the whole ecosystem there. We also have recent news of Concordance Health creating the Surgeons platform.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that one after this.
Okay. I'm gonna, it ties in, it's the whole ecosystem and networks effect, which is so powerful. We went from really trying to show this software to clients considering Palantir, and soon it will be clients seeking out Palantir. So it's a 3-stage cycle here, and I think we're nearing the one where people are actively gonna be seeking out to use Palantir across every industry, which is so powerful to me.
Yeah, this is why it's really important to understand Palantir deeply and to follow people that actually understand the company. Because if you listen to the majority of people a year and a half ago, the SPAC thing would have been the biggest debacle in the world. And I remember Amir and I were talking, I think this was May 2023, and this is when you gave me your thesis, which was no, SPACs is R&D for free, technically, and they're getting an insight on electric jets, like with Lilium, right? They're getting an insight on geospatial intelligence with the Black Sky. They're getting an insight on so many different industries, even if it's not the best monetary thing. If Palantir is a company that wants to be on the cutting edge, then they have to understand how these industries operate. And so we're past the SPAC era, but it looks like we learned a lot from that, and that's letting us get more deals, which leads us to not be a consulting company.
We're not past it yet. How much of US commercial do you think is still made off of SPAC revenue today, even though they don't have any holdings for 2 quarters now? Like, if you were just to throw a number out there, how much do you think is SPAC revenue of US commercial?
I feel like it's 10%, but I could be wrong.
It's closer to 15, and it's accelerating the past 3 quarters. So it's still very much relevant to. We know that
what SPACs do we still own?
we don't own any equity, but
So-
the contracts are still like Palantir agreed to invest in companies, and they would become clients in return. But Palantir had no obligation to keep the equity. In fact, they receive shares, they sell it immediately for money in a lot of cases, but the clients still have to be Palantir customers, and they pay up to 2 to 5 times as much as an average client. So they're like really making out like bandits on each of these. And if they can't pay, they issue shares. We've seen example of that, like
Rubicon, I think, did that.
Rubicon, Tritium. There's a lot of examples. So they're really making a lot of revenue of this. They get essentially free R&D and exposure to so many industries. It's such an interesting dynamic that people just overlooked. I know there are a few ones. I know that Matt has mentioned that he knows about the dynamics. We've talked about this before on the weekly, but yeah, it's really cool.
So let's get into the next deal then this week. Shout out to Arnie for finding this one. This was just a beautiful deal, and it was really nice to see it happen. So Palantir partnered with Mayo Clinic technically, because Mayo Clinic, which is one of the largest hospitals in the United States, one of the most respected hospitals, is going to integrate Surgence into their digital supply chain. Now, Surgence is essentially a Skywise that Palantir built in combination with Concordance. We got that deal, I believe, December 2022, which is an operating system for the healthcare supply chain. And what does that mean? That essentially means all the needles and masks and all these different things that hospitals use across the country. Cardinal Health and Concordance are one of the 2 major partners working with Palantir to build out that entire healthcare supply chain, kind of like Airbus is the major partner with Palantir on Skywise. And the idea is, if you could build an integrated healthcare supply chain system and make hospitals more efficient, because they know where they're getting their supply chain, they know where they're getting their items from, they know how their vendors are connected, and they know how their customers are delivering certain products on certain days where they have, things that go wrong and they need more needles than other hospitals in certain moments. If there's certain events, if there's a hurricane in a city and you need to have the hospital equipped, all of those events integrated into that platform, it seems like that could be really valuable in the healthcare sector. And it seems like any hospital for the right price would agree to integrate onto that platform, just like all the airlines decided to integrate onto Skywise. That could be a big growth vector for them, and they partnered with Mayo Clinic to make that happen. So we'll start with you, Amir. What did you think about that? Or not really partnership, but can you speak to the network effects of that Surgence platform and what it means for Palantir to get more into the healthcare industry?
Yeah, the industry operating systems are really starting to stack up. I mean, we know about the HD Hyundai one for like the
shipyard. Yep.
Yeah, we know about Airbus. It's been a bit quiet now. We know that they issued HyperAuto recently. We know about healthcare, like even outside of Surgence, like Palantir is really sweeping the healthcare sector. And, it's getting exposure to their products and their outcomes, which is like really powerful because people are seeing their competitors show these extreme outcomes. We know that, I don't know which event it was, but I'm sure you've seen it. Maybe you've posted it, Amit. I know that Arnie has. Like this picture of a recent Palantir event where they highlight a bunch of outcomes for different clients. We know like BP had a 60% reduction in cost per barrel. We know that Airbus had a 33% acceleration of A350 production. We know that Tyson Foods saved $200 million annually. Like they show all these outcomes, like 65% reduction in transformer ignitions at PG&E. Like they put all these numbers out. Maybe you can pull up the picture.
The picture is on your Twitter?
No, on Arnie's Twitter. It's like a big yellow.
Oh yeah, that one. I got you. Yeah, let me pull
Yeah, like it's so powerful, and it really like opens the mind of your competitors. Like, we are really missing out here. Yeah, this one. Like, when you can show this like on scale, and this is not like one industry, like, yeah, we are solving healthcare. No, this is like vastly different. Like, this
Dude, this
industry.
picture is why I think we could go to $1 trillion. Like, I know
Yeah,
it's crazy to say we can go to $1 trillion, but this picture is why I think we can get there.
Yeah, I think this is like the AIP Builders Conference or something like that. We haven't gotten much footage, but yeah, this picture is so powerful. And when you see this as a competitor, you're like, oh my God, we are missing out here. So I think like we have the network effects where you onboard your own clients onto Palantir solutions that were talked about. Concordance Health is doing that with surgeons, Airbus, HD Hyundai, and so forth. And I think it's just going to increase. And yeah, this really makes you excited to be a Palantir shareholder, how this is unfolding.
Vince, your thoughts on the network effects, particularly in the healthcare space? That Surgeon's platform is a very unique platform. If more and more hospitals start adopting it, it starts to just be more top-line revenue growth for Palantir.
Yeah. So what's very interesting here is that Palantir right now has two very different go-to-market strategies that are both working at the same time. So one of them is the AIP bootcamps, and the second one is this industry operating systems, which is basically you get the biggest of the big fish. You integrate through them, and then they start pushing your program, down. So you go like from top down. And when I started being on your stream, that was what we were all against. That takes too much time, and it's not predictable, and you don't really have other companies doing this. And we were hoping that they find another way. And it's so interesting that this go-to-market strategy is very, very valid. It's still alive and well. And I don't think that they are going to do it in every industry, because we know that Palantir does especially well where there is a lot of regulations, a lot of data, a lot of data points, and hospitals. It's a lot of very litigious. So you need to pay a lot of attention to keeping all the laws. So I think that this is very, very good news. I wish we would know more about the economics of this. Like, how does Palantir get paid for this? How do they monetize on this?
I agree, because the partnership with Concordance, that Surgeon's platform, Concordance obviously pays them for that. But if they add a partner like Mayo Clinic, which is a big hospital, how does that add monetary value for Palantir? That's a good question.
Yeah, because if they charge, I don't know, like per user or something, and then Palantir gets a cut from that, it's a fantastic revenue. But we don't really know the economics of this. But I definitely think that there is going to be industries where Palantir is going to be the gold standard, and you cannot be a player in the industry if you don't use Palantir software. And then at that point, it will become, I don't want to use the word monopoly, but kind of like a monopoly, because you can't operate with your other industry partners if you don't operate on the same data layer.
Mm-hmm.
Matt?
I don't know. I often wonder, I still don't know 100%, because I've heard about, at UDOC, how we actually structure these contracts. And at the same time, I don't necessarily know how they're structured. I think they're very flexible across different people, but then at the same time, you're able to see how Palantir gets upfront capital, or at least like $58 million deals or $25 million deals here or there. So it gets me kind of scratching my head. But I think the big piece of these things is really the stickiness of the software, and getting yourself basically building an operating system that works, creates efficiencies, and really simplifies the day-to-day tasks. Specifically from a logistics standpoint, we've seen it do really well in a lot of different logistics. Obviously, it's starting to now focus itself in with the Mayo Clinic into medical logistics. But I think the easy thing is I don't necessarily think it's about the money up front, right? I think it's about getting in the door, charging rather cheap prices, demonstrating your value, and then really saying, well, if you want us to leave, we can. And it's like, no, we don't want you to leave, right? We'll pay whatever you want. It's just, you asking for money. And so it's almost, it's almost like a catch-22, right? You don't get that large revenue growth up front, but I think at the end of the day, your contract comes up, and next thing you know, you end up signing up for more and more money, on a monthly or on an annual basis. So I'm kind of curious to see how that plays out. I haven't really seen a lot of dollar figures thrown around when it comes to a lot of these medical partnerships, which I think is kind of interesting as well. I think it's more along the lines of, because Karp's thrown this out in the past. I haven't heard a recent one, but 6 months ago he was talking about what, like 13% of beds in the U.S. is being
16% now.
16, yeah. So it's like, it's only going to continue to get better, more market share over time.
Which again matters probably more than the money. If you get the hospitals and they can't stop using you, you can raise the prices inevitably, eventually.
Exactly. You kind of end up running a monopoly. And I think that's part of the beauty of Palantir. I think that's the business model, is literally just try to grow into as many industries, as many companies, and get the market share as possible. And the money's going to come up in time, because what's going to end up happening is it's like, okay, well, switch to a competitor. It's like, well, there isn't really a competitor. It's like, well, then pay us our new contract rate that we want, or we'll lock you guys out of your accounts. Like, I don't know what it is, right? But I've seen that a little bit at UDoc, and I can't talk about it too much, but it's just like, well, we don't want the contracts to go up, but it's like, what are you going to do? Like, switch everything off of Foundry? Like, the company would implode for a couple weeks unless we figured out, how to keep it going with something else, right? It just doesn't work like that anymore. You can't just stop streaming data overnight and expect things not to go absolutely insane. So it's, some of these businesses, they act like it's just like Microsoft Excel or a PowerPoint. It's like, you could go off and use Google Slides if you want. You could go off, use Google Sheets. But when all your data is streaming in from from all the data lakes that you've already connected up to, you're kind of effed at that point. You can't, unless you find somebody else that's going to be able to do it and help you create the operating system that you want customized, it's going to be tough to leave. Anyway, I don't know if that's the question you wanted an answer to, but
no, that's
I have a really good question in my head. I know that you can't comment, and maybe you do not know the answer, but let's take a certain oil and gas company, for example, that's been with Palantir for like nearing up on a decade, not quite yet, but close. We know that Palantir has been on the front lines, as they like to say. They really developed a product specific to that industry that caters to all the problems, the workflows, etc. So they have a really good product within oil and gas, for example, and you have a good partnership. And then Palantir goes and sells that exact same solution to ExxonMobil. Maybe not the exact same, but they already know the issues you're trying to solve, which is really great for Palantir. But it makes me wonder, like, how does the company that was there from the start feel? Like, you don't really have a choice, what are you going to do? Like, cancel using Palantir? It's a really interesting dynamic where we see like a core partner help Palantir develop this operating system, and then it's just sold to their competitors. Like, it's a really interesting dynamic. We know that they're big in healthcare. Maybe healthcare isn't that competitive. I don't know how competitive the oil and gas business is, but if you're, we know that BP, for example, has had a long-standing partnership with Palantir, and you start to see ExxonMobil, you start to see Saudi companies start to partner with Palantir. You're wondering, like, well, like I'm really curious how they feel about that, and what the conversations are behind closed doors, because it's, as I mentioned, it's great for Palantir, but it makes me wonder what it means for the standing partnerships. We know that in some cases there are partnerships in the sense that they develop a product together and each part gets a cut, so you don't really mind too much. But that's surely not always the case across every industry.
Vince?
No, I'm curious about maybe you can take the answer first, because it was a question to you, I feel, and then I have an
For
observation.
sure. Yeah, I mean, how do I say this? You're right. At UDoc, we partnered very early with Palantir to help develop some of the key things that they use now, like Quiver, and they really at the time they really had a lot of progress going on PG, Project Gotham, and it really was kind of literally sitting for hours trying to. And I don't know how much of this is kind of like the hard part, because like I always talked about how difficult it was to implement Foundry and getting some of the software up and running within. And I don't know how much of it was because we were early adopters at UDoc to using Foundry, and how much of it now like is because some of those products have been created now at Palantir and they have them on the shelf. How it might have streamlined going forward, right? Because a lot of those products we were kind of building on the fly, but at the same time, I think that they also took what we had initially started at UDoc and actually brought it to GM, and GM actually had some feeds into how they utilized it. And I think originally it was called Chronicle before they switched it to Quiver, but they took the Chronicle application and they brought it to GM, and GM is using it. Obviously, they have a lot of streaming data that kind of comes in. They're building thousands of cars a day, different robots, different parts of the business. They're all trying to put together a single vehicle. So it's pretty comparable, right? You have different, disparate sort of data systems that are all trying to help each other. And so they came back to us, and there were some things about Quiver that initially I was like, this is bullshit, right? Like, I don't understand it. But at the end of the day, it ended up being a better product, right? So to answer your question with respect to like, it going to Apache or a different oil company, and it kind of ruins your competitive advantage, I think it's a plus and a minus, because if you think about it, it might not be as important in, say, the healthcare space because you're trying to save lives, and it's not necessarily, a for-public or a for-profit sort of organization. Some hospitals are, but not a lot of them are. But when it comes to oil and gas, they are mostly public companies. But at the same time, they'll all kind of help each other, if that kind of makes sense. But I understand where you're kind of coming from, because if you have a competitive advantage and then they're able to go off and give it to somebody else, then you kind of get screwed. But I think, and obviously then you're competing against them at a higher level again. But I think the thing that was beautiful, at least with the UDoc partnership, is we had years ahead of being able to be front runners in our particular industry. That really allowed us at a very necessary time for us to be able to get ourselves back on a right direction. And it really changed the trajectory of our profitability per barrel. So it really helped out from that perspective. But I agree with you. We talk about that quite a bit, actually. It's just like, well, now you have other companies using it, right? How does that make us unique? But it's like there is still no other product out on the market that we would be able to switch to that would still benefit us as much as how Foundry has benefited us. And we're continuing to build different applications and get rid of old legacy systems that we've tried. Even while we were onboarding Palantir and Foundry within our organization, we kept trying to go to other consultants to help build new legacy systems, build new systems, and then they would, within a year fizzle out because they just didn't work. And then eventually Palantir would take over that legacy system and build a custom application, and that would be retired. And it's just interesting how no matter what, even if you think, Palantir is not the perfect, blah, 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 it's the one that has stayed around now for the longest time within the organization. And especially when you're going through these digitalization of impacts that I've seen, we kept switching at UDoc every couple of years. Every year, every 18 months, we kept going to this system, to that system, to the other system, all in the name of digitalization. But this one's really been the one that's stuck around for 8 years, going on 9 years for as far as I know. And I think
pretty incredible.
That's something to say, especially in this world where things are changing so quickly. anyway, I don't know if that necessarily answered your question, and definitely not directly, but I personally am for it because at the end of the day, we end up being better for it, meaning that, movement to other players within the industry because they have different views and opinions and different strategies on how they develop assets than we do. We talk about that quite frequently.
It definitely helped understand the dynamics, especially when you mentioned that it has been a topic of conversation. I know that there's not a real answer to this. It's gonna differ, but it really solidifies in my mind that Palantir is becoming the type of company that's one of my favorite ones to invest in, and it's a mafia company, and I mean that in a really positive sense, where Palantir can operate like a mafia where everyone has to use them whether they like it or not. As you mentioned, there's no really alternative and you have to use it if you want to stay competitive. And also, interestingly, we have the sun. Me and Vince always have the synchronized sun coming up.
Yeah. I think that was funny. But no, it's like Microsoft, right? Like you just got to use it, right? It's
Matt, I have a quick question. Because it's a super interesting topic that we're on. And would you say that, because as far as I understand, like you guys synchronize data via Palantir, that is, a lot of sensor readings, a lot of, data that is outside, but you guys are the one who is making decisions based on that data. And if Palantir, what I mean by this is Palantir couldn't really take the system that they developed for you and use it at another company, because what you bring to the table at UDoc is the decisions that you make based on the data, and Palantir is just like a tool. And I was thinking that this is maybe when they develop these operating systems like Skywise, it's not actually Palantir that seems to own them. It's probably exactly because of this consideration that Amir said, that the Skywise is given to Airbus, and then because otherwise it would create this really weird conflict of interest. And I think that when it's it's possible to copy the operating system and use it for competitors, then it becomes like connected to a company, and then the company is paying for it, like HyperAuto, Skywise, and now this medical one that I have a Joe Biden moment on what it's called. So is it a correct observation on my part?
That's a good question. I would say the majority of my time is spent in Quiver. It's spent in Fusion workbooks, Contour, but I think very early on, Palantir in their development engineers really tried to focus on building kind of like a Skywise, like you said. And there was some traction, and I don't know how far it's made it into other companies. And so, I just kind of keep it maybe quiet. But there was one or two actual applications that they kind of wanted to make that was kind of off the shelf, like a Quiver, and I just don't know how much that actually made it to other companies like Apache, Exxon, etc. I actually would be kind of curious talking to maybe I'll reach out to some folks, but now that you mention it, I had never really thought about that, but there was a really big push from Palantir, not in a bad way. It wasn't like a thou shall. It was like, try it out. And it just never really took off, I think. And I think that
you mean like a UDoc Wise now?
What's that?
Like a UDoc Wise.
Yeah, I think that what they tried to do was they tried to take their vision of how the data was streaming, and they built, and this is, I might be getting this completely wrong, right? Because I never really dealt much with this particular application. But at a time they were saying, well, this is how we think, based off how the data flows into the organization, all the sensors, etc., how you guys should operate it. And, how, we think that the thing works based off of all of our conversations, all of our interviews, and everything like that. And I think a lot of times what we ended up doing was really just building kind of like dashboards within Quiver or building kind of command centers within Fusion that had their specific trigger points, like you said, Vince. It's like you get all this data that kind of comes in, but then you kind of create the ranges of, say, whether it's from a regulatory perspective, safety perspective, safe operating perspective, because we're dealing with, collapse and burst pressures of pipes and all these different sort of things. Like, everything's, all the data comes in just like it would at a different facility at a different company. But depending on how that piece of pipe or what field it's flowing from or how far away it is from the platform, the way that you're going to operate is going to be completely differently. To an extent, right? Some things might be similar, some things might be a lot more disparate. So to me, a lot of what I've seen is a lot of people creating things custom to their asset. They have, let's just say, hundreds of things of kit or meters, pressure, temperature sensors, all feeding in. How open a choke or a valve is comparatively to how it could be closed or open, and what temperature is flowing across it, and etc. Is it flowing in its optimal range? Do you need to choke it back? Do you need to open it more? All that sort of stuff. And I think that they tried creating a one-size-fits-all off-the-shelf product, but every asset I've seen, I'll just be blunt. We have 5 very large operated facilities in the Deepwater Gulf of Mexico, which I left the Gulf of Mexico business. I work somewhere else in the company now, but I still work a lot with those guys. And every single asset I've seen has their own sort of optimization tool for all the wells that are there. So
basically, it's really hard to copy. It's not easy.
Yeah, I mean, it's all disparate, right? Is there a way for them to create an off the shelf? Actually, I would love. CodeStrap knows a few of the guys that. I think they went to the first FounderCon. I don't know if anybody from UDOC has been back to any of the follow-on FounderCon or AIP cons, but I'll have to talk to my buddy that CodeStrap knows and see what he thinks, if that ever took off and why, and maybe I'll report back to you guys.
So let me play this video because we were talking about Concordance. Here's a 3-minute video on their website that people probably haven't seen or we saw a long time ago. This is how they're building a healthcare supply chain system similar to Skywise with Concordance.
Concordance wants to fix the fragmented healthcare supply chain. If you think about a nurse or a doctor bedside needing a product, and if they have to leave the patient's side to go search for that, that is time not spent providing patient care.
Fundamentally, suppliers, distributors, and caregivers do not function in isolation. They're part of a complex web of people and products that make life-saving care possible.
Today, the care system faces daily shortages of staff. Chronic conditions continue to rise. When it comes to supply chain disruption, hospitals and patients will always be the hardest hit.
The technology needed to solve these challenges needs to embrace that complexity. That's where we're using Foundry.
Concordance wants to reinvent the distribution landscape and what is expected of a healthcare distributor. We're using Palantir Foundry to build a digital healthcare ecosystem that can meet the unique and complex needs of an ever-changing healthcare industry. Our suppliers have always had visibility into what they are sending to distributors, though what happens to that product once it's received, they're much less aware of.
They may have products sitting in 200, 500, 1,000 different locations. If we can connect those two pieces of data, we can make better informed decisions so that the patient isn't affected, so that the healthcare worker does have product to take care of them. The reason why we're reactive is because we don't have visibility. The lack of visibility also breeds a lack of trust. The ecosystem disrupts all of that. We can provide real-time data so that people can make actionable decisions. We're not waiting 30, 60, 90 days for that information to travel up and downstream. Once we really understood the power of Foundry, we quickly realized that this could be the solution for the entire industry.
We can assign a level of urgency to different critical back orders so they know which of these need to be fulfilled as a highest priority.
We can make sure we have verified and trusted sources in the platform, but also the right people have secure managed access to them at the right time and for the right purposes.
Our ultimate goal is to build and scale that capability to find solutions within the supply chain before there are disruptions.
There's no way we would have been able to build an ecosystem like this ourselves from the ground up. With Foundry, we're using the platform to build with it. We can tailor an existing proven product to our own vision for this integrated healthcare supply chain.
As we continue to build and entities bring ideas into the ecosystem, we expect that value to grow monumentally as we look into the future.
That's the network effect, more data into the platform.
This is more than just about creating a seamless and efficient process. It's about taking reactive decisions that are made today throughout the entire supply chain and turning them into proactive solutions. That has very real world implications when we think about the individual patients that these products are used for.
Now, imagine every hospital in the world using that shit. Palantir's
we-
going to $1 trillion, bro.
Should we watch the new Palantir commercial on their Twitter? It's like 1 minute.
Yeah.
And then I have some comments on that.
Okay. So there was some fancy music in that one. That was nice. Okay, so this was the new video they came out with. It's basically like a commercial about American industrialism. All right.
To address pilot shortage.
40 years of falling manufacturing.
Decades of manufacturing.
Manufactured crisis. Deindustrial.
This is mixed reality right here. They said industry AI at the end, kind of this whole operating industry system we've been talking about.
Yeah, I've always loved the Palantir aesthetic, and they've always had such an amazing production quality. So props to the Palantir media team. From the Palantir redacted video like 3 years ago, where they only it got you really hyped up. I don't know if you guys remember that when it's like a 30-second one where they showed a bunch of military men. It was followed up by an article in Wall Street Journal, which really showed no product. It's just showing that Palantir is involved in the military. And then you fast forward to the Meta Constellation one, another really popular one, where they talked about how they're solving wildfires, how they're using satellites to detect like submarines. And then you have the one today that we just watched, and they've really gotten better at showing the product and the use cases. I mean, they showed the mixed reality technician assistant, which is really cool. They show more workflows. They show outcomes. They show customer quotes. I mean, Elon Musk says something like, a good commercial is one you don't regret watching. I've never regretted watching or spending like a minute per Palantir commercial. I mean, the production quality is so high, and they're getting so much better at actually showing. Like, we went from this black box argument with the Palantir redacted video because it showed no product. It just showed that Palantir is really making an impact across many industries, but we don't know how. Like, this one actually shows us, okay, what is the product actually doing? What is it delivering in the industry? So props to the Palantir media team. Always such high production quality. I love the aesthetic. Like they've kept the same style of video throughout. It's just so cool.
Vince?
I have nothing else to add other than what Amir has said.
I think it was a cool video. I was trying to figure out what song they used. It's Get Lucky. Do you guys remember that song?
No.
We're up all night to get lucky. You remember that song?
Daft Punk, yeah.
No.
I was thinking that's what it was, yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, I was trying to figure it out.
It's
And then
dentistry music. It was. I like the AIP Conf 4 much better. That was good music.
Yeah, where yeah, do you have the playlist for that, Amit? I need that.
I don't. I gotta get that.
I mean,
That's all right,
just 30 seconds. I know we're like it's not related, but can you just pull up the Palantir redacted video? If you just YouTube that, it's like 30 seconds. Just compare what you just saw to like one of the earlier Palantir commercials. Like they've gotten so far. If you could just pull that up, it's really short and it's like it's cool, but it shows nothing, and it makes you think like, well, Palantir is a black box was the argument when this came out. Let's just watch this. Like it's really cool, right? But it shows you no product, so that really like made the narrative of Palantir is a black box. But now we're actually seeing like use cases, workflows, demos of the products, like the mixed reality. Like it's really showing you how they impact the daily operations in industry. So they've gotten a really far, like they've gotten so far since that point.
So let's end it on this. What do you think is going to be Palantir's future for the next 6 months? Because we're at the halfway mark of the year. You can throw out a price target. You can throw out specific predictions on deals or partnerships or growth. Just anything you're thinking for the next 6 months.
I'll start this one. So
Okay.
I think that it depends. I'm already, like, again, as you said, like we're up 40%. So if we would stay flat until the end of the year, it would be a tremendous year for all shareholders, even though mentally I know that people would be complaining like, why aren't we moving? And I think that where we end the year, it depends on the next two earnings that are coming. And if we're going to see an acceleration in growth. If there is a surprise acceleration and they raise the guidance and it is what we think it is, it could be that we end the year, in the 35s. If there is just implication that, a lot of, there's a ton of AIP boot camps, they're saying that customers are reacting very positively, but there is not a revenue increase and not an increased guidance. I think we might end the year between the 25 to 20 range. And I think that the market it's my personal opinion. I don't think the contract announcements move the market so much because there has been so many that I think the market is like numb to Palantir market announcements. And it's like, okay, another one, cool.
Amir?
Yeah, I think Palantir is fairly valued at this range. And for the ones that want a detailed look at my model, there's a 30-minute video on my channel where I detail all the inputs and my thought process behind it. And, I'm not really one to predict pricing, but we have S&P inclusion as a potential catalyst. We have, I'm sure that the quarterly results will be above analyst expectations. So, there are plenty of catalysts to move the price up. We got a bunch of upgrades to the stock recently. Argus at 29, Bank of America reiterating 28. But it's always so interesting to me that sell-side analysts issue price targets so like after a quarter has ended, but before the earnings, because they're just going to revise that anyway. So I never understood the point of that. But yeah, we had the Mones one with the AI is a revenue illusion and a downgrade on Palantir. So remind me in X months about that one.
That was
But
what they
yeah,
had. What, $20 on the
yeah,
downgrade?
$20 citing that AI is a revenue illusion, and I think they're gonna fuck around and find out.
Was there
Um,
really one that gave a price target of $8? I couldn't tell
No,
if
that
that
was
was.
fake. They
the,
meant to
the,
say
That was
they meant
okay.
to say Platica, but they ended up saying Palantir, so the Newswire got it wrong.
Okay.
The
Okay.
conspiracy is someone paid them, the Newswires, to like change it to Palantir to tank it, but it didn't work. So
No,
Okay.
I can
Okay.
I can buy it. That is an honest mistake. But
I
you know,
think so too. I think so too.
it's interesting. When I saw that, I was like, "Are we back in 22? We went from like the 40s to the 8s, you know." So
Dude,
I was
if
like,
Palantir got back to
is,
$8,
is
it's
this
never
like
gonna
the late
happen.
wave?
But
Oh
if
boy,
it did, I mean,
like
I don't know.
under
dude.
the same circumstances, like the price could move to 8. It could be justified or unjustified, but under the current circumstances, if Palantir was 8, I think I would, for the first time in my life, take out leverage. I've never done that when investing. I think I would do that, and I would go 100% Palantir if it was at $8 today. Like it would be
Yeah.
insane.
And it's so crazy because when it was at $8, I know all of us bought at $8, but we definitely. I mean, I think Vince bought the most at $8. I think your average is still 8, right, Vince?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I'm sure all of us wish we bought a lot more, but that's the hard part about investing is like taking that
But
leap of faith when no one believes.
but you're raising such an interesting point because I regret not having more shares. So
Yeah.
even if I could have bought at 18, 15, 20, it would have been a very, very good decision. So it's not necessarily the average, it's how many shares you have.
Yeah,
Lisa said if it did, I would have a child and sell it.
I would like start to queue up selling my kidneys and stuff. But you know, at that point, I was 100% of my portfolio in Palantir when it was at those levels. I think my wife has a 6.1 average. It moves up and down because the Swedish crown changes against the dollar. She bought at like 5.8, like a huge majority of her stake, but it's like because the dollar
Does
fluctuation.
she have on her overall portfolio? Is that a decent percentage, that Palantir position at $6, or is that kind of just?
Oh
sitting?
yeah. It's of course since it's gone up like
When is she starting
300%
her YouTube
or something.
channel? As your channel, we need your wife's channel.
But
Yeah,
you know
I would
what's
like-
funny? She's outperforming me in her investments, but she's a forex trader. Like she knows like nothing about.
I have a question. And do you give her crap about also like trading short term and
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
like, really?
and she shuts me up really quickly.
Not
with
the
the
nights,
performance.
not the nights where he wants to get lucky. He shuts up on that.
But you know, it's so messed up because like she outperforms me in investing, even though I spend like most of my waking hours on this, and she's like looks good here buying. I'm like, what the fuck, you know? And then I give her crap for caring about charts. Like she sits around and draws a line. I'm like, what the fuck is like what's this crap? And then she just
You're-
makes a killing.
You're
I'm
like, you're like, honey, you don't get it. Technical analysis doesn't work. And then
yeah, it's all an illusion. And she's like, oh yeah, here's my P&L. I'm like, we can't really say much, but you know, it's frustrating at times. But I'm really proud of her and her Palantir average. She has a good AMD average. What other stocks does she have?
I think the big thing is once you're convinced on something, you know, and the price is where you like it to be. Like obviously right now 25 is a harder price to buy it at than 8, but it's just a lesson to go heavier when you actually do believe in something. Now granted the risk is up there because it wasn't proven at 8, but the things that were proven about it was the leadership for sure, even though we had some leadership changes, and the product to an extent. The thing that wasn't proven was the go to market. And that was the scariest part at $8 because like, what if they never figure out how to sell this? But we always knew you could figure out sales. You can't figure out product. You know, it's hard to replicate product.
Yeah, but also at the time we had the 30% CAGR promise from Palantir as well. So you could really project out a lot of years. And I think at the time, I know I made this reference. I know Mariana made this reference. I know Arnie was big on it. But basically, if you purchased at 8, you bought government and got commercial for free.
Yeah,
And that was really a lot of margin of safety if you invested in that range. So I was really never worried. That's why I was comfortable going 100% of my portfolio in Palantir at the time. Now it's more like a third of my portfolio. But I still don't think it's expensive here. And I wouldn't be surprised if we move towards the $30 range towards the end of the year.
Yeah, and Garcia makes a good point here. I mean, when it's at $100 or $200, it really doesn't matter if the average is 25, 20, 17, 18, even 30. Like, the point is, if it does what we all think it can become, if you're buying below, let's say 35, and you have that average for a while, you're going to make a ton of money. So
I'm going to give you a hot take here. I think it really matters if you bought at 20 or 25. It's a 4 or 5x. And it's a big difference.
I don't know. Like, for $5, that's not. If it's $8 versus 25, I understand.
But it's a doubling of your money at that point.
I get it, but you can't be a psychic to get the.
No, you can't. But I mean, you shouldn't like throw it out the window. Like,
when are you better? 1,000 shares at $8 or 10,000 shares at $25 when the stock goes to 100?
Yeah, the latter, of course. But I'm just saying, like, it's not the hugest deal, but I mean, it does matter. So don't pretend like it's.
No. But I will fight back. It cannot. If you want to be a healthy investor with a non-toxic mentality, you cannot go crazy over $1 or $2 here or there. In the long term, yes, it might mean more returns, but from $20 to $30, like, you can't kill yourself a night knowing that you could have bought more at 21 versus 26.
I think
the dollar amount like argument, it doesn't really matter if a stock is 100 or 98, but 20 and then plus or minus $2, that's 10%. So like the lower the stock price is, the more compounding effect you do lose. I mean, it's not a huge deal. I'm just saying, like.
But I think the difference is if it means that you're not going to buy any shares at all, right? Buying at 18 versus buying at 20, in 20 years time, it's not going to matter, right? Yeah. The fact that the thing that's going to matter is that you bought, right? And I think what a lot of people end up doing is they're waiting for the perfect price. They're still waiting for it to go back to $15, and that may not come. And I think what Garcia is trying to say here is it's at a decent price now for where we think it will be in the future, which is probably over $100, maybe $150, $200, whatever you think it is. Is it really going to matter that a difference of 20% in stock price, 25% in stock price? Or what's really going to matter is that you got the stock and that you wrote it up 4 to 5x. And I think that's what he's referring to. That, of course, we all agree.
Yeah, I buy that argument. Yeah, I can agree with that argument. Yeah.
And Amir, mathematically you're correct, but philosophically you're wrong.
That's a good quote.
If you guys actually want to know the valuation on if Palantir is valued or not, please make sure to follow Amir's YouTube. Everyone here, if you're subscribed to this channel, you should be subscribed to his channel. Matt and Vince are also in the description as well. Amir just started. He's trying to get into the YouTube world, and he's putting out really good content about Palantir.
Thank you.
One last question. Maybe if we have time, we can take it. If not, maybe next week. But what do you guys think? Because it looks like it's going to be a Trump presidency after this debate, and how that affects Palantir in the future.
No, Amir, you don't get to talk first. You're from fucking Sweden. You don't get to talk about this shit.
Sorry. Relax. Okay.
He said Trump. Okay, this is America. Anyway, I'm just kidding. But I don't think it matters. Biden or Trump, I think Palantir is going to do well. I really don't think it matters. Overall market might do better if Trump wins, but for Palantir, I think they're going to get contracts either way because they're just too important. Matt?
Mm-hmm. I need to do a little bit more DD. I think from a Space Force perspective, I know Trump was the one that started Space Force, and he probably will be very adamant about continuing to grow it. And there might be potential military expansion when Trump kind of comes to power, because he is very much about the military, making sure that those guys have the supplies that they need in case anything happens. I don't think he wants to use it by any means, but sometimes a strong military is a nice deterrent to have. And so I think that might lead to a little bit more. But at the same time, I haven't seen the Department of Defense or anything shy away from using Palantir over the last 3 years. So it's not like I feel like it's going to go away. But I'd have to look at what other areas that Palantir has really doubled down in. And I'd say a lot of them are probably very unpolitically motivated. Like healthcare is always going to be a big piece, and Palantir is big in healthcare. I feel like the DoD is always going to be spending money regardless of what president. So I think the only one that I can think of is like space, maybe, and I think that might be slightly stronger under Trump than. But I also think it's not necessarily strictly about the U.S. Yes, we're a U.S.-based company, but if you think about it in this perspective, 3/4 of the world is going through an election this year, and so the remaining quarter is just going to be the only ones that are stable. So I think that there's a lot of potential bias towards what is the U.S. is, because we are the largest economy at the moment. But I think that really what we should be really investigating, and maybe this is a topic for future conversation, is looking at what European countries and what other countries around the world might be more willing to use Palantir, because there are some large markets and some areas that we haven't necessarily dove deep into yet, like Germany and many other governments, that with a new election and a new person at the helm, we might be able to actually break into, and that could be getting Europe out of its stagnation, right? Because a lot of what we've seen from a Palantir growth perspective has been driven by U.S. commercial and U.S. government, and less likely international commercial from Palantir side, right? So the hope for me is, U.S. commercial is going to continue to grow. It's been doing really well over the past couple quarters. Can we reignite the growth that we have yet to really see in European government as well as European commercial?
Amir?
Karp was recently asked this. I don't remember which outlet. I think it was at AIPCon, and Yahoo Finance asked him. I could be wrong. But the quote was like, Palantir does not really care. They will do well under both administrations. They have proven that for the past 20 years.
Yeah.
So he said that they don't really care. However, I do believe that Trump will make Palantir have better results. As Matt mentioned, defense spending. Palantir is really big on making the American military strong. So there will be focus on defense spending. And also, he really doesn't want other nations to leech off of the US. So he will most likely force other countries to bolster their own defenses. It's not like we're going to send the 300 billion to Ukraine. No, he's going to force other nations to contribute as well, which could trickle their way into Palantir. And the implications are that the US will have a better economy under Trump, which makes more companies able to purchase Palantir products. And overall, I think the West will be stronger under Trump compared to Biden. And that's in line with Palantir's
All right, so
mission.
we know who you're voting for if you are American.
Well, I'm not. Okay, I have to say this as an outsider, and I've thought this for like the past.
What did you think about the debate as a foreign?
I'm gonna tell you this, and I think most of Europeans agree, or most of the world agrees, that it's truly baffling that the most powerful nation in the world can't put forward two better candidates than Trump and Biden. Like, it's really laughable. Like, is this the best you got to run for the presidency? Like, two elderly, like, it's laughable. Like, I never understood this. Like, how can you not come up with two better candidates than Trump and Biden, or like Hillary?
I would say,
like,
I would say something a little bit different to this, because it's funny, because Amit, you were very correct when you say you guys are not American, shut up. But on the other hand, like, it's really weird because like the US is so powerful that the election result like affects us also, and yet we don't have a say, right?
Yeah.
And I feel that like Biden's policies, for example, have affected, I mean, like the war in Ukraine, the inflation, like all these things, like they have affected my business really, really, really badly, you know?
Yeah.
And it's yeah. So as a foreigner, like I'm hoping he will not continue. And under Trump, I was like, you know, when there's peace, it also affects us, you know, and I was very happy that the world was a much more stable place. I'm not unhappy with, I don't have this viewpoint that it's two very bad candidates. Like, I think it's one very bad candidate and the other one statistically did quite well. Like if we, as David Sachs says, you know, it was A/B tested, like both of them now.
Yeah.
No,
that's fair. That's fair. I mean, it's kind of crazy the times we're living in. Obviously, in that debate, I think most people objectively can say that it was hard for Biden to kind of talk and get through it. after the debate,
have you seen him lately? Because everybody was saying he did so poorly, and then I was like watching the debate, and I was like expecting, and I was like, no, this is like how he has been the last like year. Like, what are people talking about?
it was the first time for people like my parents saw him in like a year, and they couldn't believe that they were watching that.
My God.
It wasn't even close. And, Vince isn't surprised because you've been watching like Biden ramble across different platforms throughout the years. And I agree, but it's still like, it was horrible. Like Trump swept the floor with him. It's not even close. So, yeah.
But he didn't.
As someone outside the US, I do hope for a Republican win for the cited reasons. I think a stronger economy will be better for the global.
Did you guys see this comment? Hakto made him very.
Dude, when they asked him about the adult film actress, if he had just said, "I did not get any Hawk Tua from an adult film actress," he would have solidified the presidency right there.
Why do you pronounce it Tua and not actually do that?
Well, I'm
I
not
never
not as animated. I think you have experience with this. I don't know.
Tua, No, you like,
And Amir, you seem to know a lot about Hawk Tuas.
You seem to know a lot about this stuff, Amir.
It's suspicious.
To make a broader point, besides the election, this is why we're all investors. Because at the end of the day, like, I agree with Amir. The candidates we're putting up are kind of crazy, Trump and Biden. And they affect the economy, they affect the stock market, but we have to take control of our own destiny. And if you're hoping for a politician to save you, it's just not going to happen. Yep. So investing in general, forget just investing in Palantir, it is a way towards gaining your own autonomy and independence external from the state. The state is going to affect it, but you have to take control of your own destiny, and that requires actually investing.
Yeah. It's so interesting that, like whether the GDP grows 4% or 2%, like it doesn't matter, because each year, if I, study new things or I become effective, I can increase my own production like 30, 40, 50%, like in my own company. The only thing that, so I never really cared like what the GDP does, because, like I'm always in control of what I'm producing,
Right.
But when inflation is 15%, that does give you a slap in the face.
Yeah, or crypto. I mean, Trump's pro crypto. So if you've got a majority of your wealth in Bitcoin or crypto assets, you like have no choice, right? You have to care about his candidacy at that point. So it's going to be nuanced to see how it plays out over the next 6 months in the United States. All right, that's it for us. Thank you everybody for joining. Hope you all enjoyed. Again, Amir's YouTube channel in the description.
Everyone here has a YouTube channel. Follow everyone.
Yeah, Amir's YouTube, Matt's YouTube, Vince's YouTube, and their Twitters. So all of that in the description. It might take 2 minutes.
This was a paid sponsorship by Amir.
Yeah, Amir sponsored the show today.
But you after.
It's really I want people to check, because a lot of people here already subscribe to Matt and Vince, but we need more content creators that talk about Palantir. It helps the entire community, so definitely make sure to support Amir.
And he can do the real Tua sound.
The fact that you did that means you're turning into a content creator. Because you're you're getting in the moment, dude. So that's good.
I don't know if there was like some. I don't know how the mic picked that up.
Picked it up perfect.
Can we get one more before we end it out?
No.
We'll end it out on a Hawk Tua, and then I'll press end.
If you subscribe to my Patreon, I will give that service.
No. So you should just be like, everyone, please give a Hawk Tua on the subscribe button, and then I'll end the stream. That's the perfect endorsement of your channel.
Okay, everyone, give a.
Hold on, take your time. I'll give you a countdown. It's right there. You have to subscribe to the channel after he does this. All right, 3, 2,
I mean, if
1.
I'm embarrassing myself publicly, you better hit that subscribe button. So I'm gonna give it. I'm a bit sick, so it's like rustling inside. So no, wait. No, I'm not doing this. Fuck. I'm not for sale. I'm not for sale.
You're a YouTuber, dude. You have to put yourself out there.
I'm not for sale.
You know how many stupid jokes I say, hoping people laugh? Like
the store fucking got me, dude.
All right, we're just get it over with. Just give a Hawk Tua on that subscribe button. 3, 2, 1. on the subscriber. You have to finish it. But anyway.
No, you hit the subscribe. Man, end the shit fast, man.
Bye, everyone. Have a good one.
Edit
Good night.
yourself. Edit yourself.